Welcome to One Brothas Mind, and I am KD Smooth. Today we will question and challenge popular information and views from a B1 perspective, while we expose the real facts you need. We do this to strengthen your logical, critical, and discerning thinking skills. Because in today's world, hard choices are mandatory and they come with consequences. So you need all the information. And at One Brothas Mind, we do this from a B1 Yeshua the Christ follower's perspective. Now, if you're not ready, you better get ready with Katie Smooth at One Brothas Mind. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's Katie Smooth coming back at you with a new report. I pray you all are doing well. Shalom, family. Family, tonight's report, we're going to, we need to talk. We need to have a long, serious talk, family. Tonight's report, you guys saw the thumbnail. We're going to discuss this. Black homelessness, or in addition, elderly Black homelessness. Okay? And our focus tonight is going to be on more so the homelessness that's exploding with our elders, with our Black elderly population. That's going to be our primary focus. We're going to dabble in all of it, but our primary focus is going to be on that. Why is this happening? So just before we get into that, family, please remember to smash the likes, share this report on all your social media, and be sure to be subscribed to One Brothas Mind, where we try to bring you the information and facts you need. Okay, family, many of you already know or somewhat aware of what's going on, but it's happening so fast for many of us, family. It's a blur. And we need to talk, because there are some things that we can do, family, to stem the tide of being homeless and prevent a lot of us from becoming homeless. But we have to discuss these things, make sure we are aware of what our options are, and take action sooner rather than later. Okay? Again, we're discussing the exploding rate of so-called Black homelessness and our homelessness in our elderly population as well. That's going to be our primary focus this evening. Many of you, whether you are aware of it or not, you have to understand that as the baby boomers age, they are more likely to experience homelessness. This trend is expected to continue in the next few years, with more than 1 in 5, or 22% approximately, homeless people aged 55 to 64 since 2018. And that number has skyrocketed since 2018. Okay? In a report, it also found that the number of homeless people aged 65 or older increased by 36% in 2018. And that number has exploded. Okay? Real quick, I want to share with you guys a couple of quick highlights from a USA Today article. This article was published on January 13th, 2023 by Clary Thornton. The title of the article is More Cities and States Make Homeless Encampments a Crime, Leaving Low-Income People with Few Options. Again, this was a USA Today article. Okay. Couple of quick highlights from this article. First, as the number of people experience homelessness increases across the country, more cities and states have passed laws making it illegal to live out of tents and cars or sleep in public spaces. In recent months, high-profile measures have been approved targeting homelessness in many western U.S. cities across the entire United States. Experts warn more people will enter homelessness as housing costs increase or continue to increase. Let's see here, in the state of Missouri, on January 1st, a statewide ban on sleeping on state-owned land took effect in Missouri, making it a misdemeanor to sleep in public spaces such as parks or under bridges. A misdemeanor, meaning you can be and will be arrested. Okay. A couple of more highlights here. In Tennessee, in July, Tennessee became the first state to make it a felony to live in a tent or sleep on state land. Did you know that? Policies like these are making homelessness worse because arrest, jail time, and a criminal record put up steep additional barriers to employment or securing an apartment and accessing social services. You see what they're doing? In Los Angeles, a city council approved ban on tent living in certain areas was expanded in August of 2022 to prohibit encampments within 500 feet of schools and daycare centers after teachers and parents complained students couldn't access nearby sidewalks. There's a lot going on, family. So that's just a couple of highlights from that article. Again, this article was in the USA Today. The title of the article was More Cities and States Make Homeless Encampments a Crime, Leaving Low-Income People with Few Options. It's published January 13th by Clary Thornton. Okay? Thornton. Family, you might hear, other people out here on the social media and maybe in these YouTube streets talking about this homeless issue. But as y'all already know, here at One Brothas Mind, we not only want to talk about issues, we not only want to identify problems, but we want to try to offer solutions. Because what's the point of just saying, here's a problem here, without solutions? That's one of the biggest differences that you're going to find between One Brothas Mind and most other so-called people out here in these podcast streets, in these video report streets. One Brothas Mind, we try to offer solutions, practical solutions that you can implement in your lives to help avoid a lot of these problems or rectify them. Okay? So, to be clear, more black people, and especially more elderly black people, are living today in shelters, living in their cars and in tents and in encampments all over the United States. Well, let's put it this way. What you have to understand is, if you or someone say they went to high school and they was like, all right, college is not really my thing, or for whatever reason, a trade school is not really my thing. Just school ain't it. And they're like, okay, I'm going on out into the workforce. Oftentimes, they spend their whole lives working as just laborers with low-paying jobs that pay just enough money for them to survive in the city. They can't, or they don't make enough money to pay their living expenses and save or invest on the side. So they're basically living check to check for most, if not their entire lives. And at some point, unfortunately, whether it's just age or a health issue, those type of things are going to start to kick in. And for people that are just been renting their whole lives, when they get to a point where, whether it's age or health or both, and they're still living check to check for the most part, and the rents prices are increasing like they have been over the last couple years, where are they going to go? Where are they going to live? Or a better question is, where can they afford to live? Okay? Because in a lot of our major cities, the rent prices have increased to such an amount to where not only can they no longer afford the rent in their current apartment or rental space, when they go, okay, that's fine, I'll go find me somewhere else to live. When they search the area or their entire city, people are realizing something new. There's nowhere in this entire city, cross town, uptown, whatever you want to call it, that they can find a rental unit that they can afford and qualify for. The rent prices everywhere have drastically increased. So what are they going to do? So many people are finding themselves where in a lot of the major cities like California, New York, what have you, the rents have increased so much and they cannot find any other rental spaces that they can afford on their current income. They're literally having to move outside of the city itself to attempt to find more affordable rental rates and somewhere to literally live, even if that's possible. And I mean, if and when you have to do that, your entire the entire operation of your life and your family's life is going to be drastically affected or drastically changed. Because here you are living in location or city X, pick a side, east side, west side, whatever. And now your rent's increased and you've scoured the whole city. You got your notice. You got a few months notice, and that's how much time you got to find somewhere else to relocate to. And now you done scoured the whole city, and all the rents everywhere are too high. You can't afford them. So now you're stuck with either trying to find a roommate, which I'm going to discuss that briefly in a moment, or literally you have to move outside of the city in a, whatever you want to call it, suburban or outside the city area or a cheaper area where the rents hopefully are more affordable for you. But if you do that, now you're living outside the city, there's several new issues or factors that you got to deal with. One, if you've had to relocate outside of the city that you are currently living in, now you got a longer commute to get back and forth to work, to your job. That's number one. Number two, if you have school-aged children or even small children, are you going to have to change the school that your children currently attend and put them in a new school? How is that going to affect your children? If you have really small children, say, that are in daycare, where you currently live in the city, you had finally found a daycare that worked for you, that you were comfortable with, and now that you got to move outside of the city to find a rental space that you can afford on your income, are you going to try and keep your kids still in the same daycare that they've been in, or are you going to have to find new daycare in the area where you're relocating to? And how is all of that going to impact your commute? Or you got to, are you going to organize getting your kids back and forth to school if you need to, and still getting to work on time? It's a nightmare. It becomes a nightmare for many people, or it's becoming a nightmare for many people. And a lot of people are just getting caught. A lot of people are just getting caught off guard, if they can, I'll find somewhere here soon, and the days tick by, weeks tick by, next thing you know, they haven't found nowhere else to rent, and they're running out of time, and then all of a sudden, bing, they're evicted, and now they're homeless, and they're doing what you see on your screen. They're sleeping in their cars or whatever, still trying to find somewhere else to live that they can afford. Okay? So what you also need to understand is this situation, if you're still reasonably young, I'd say like 40, 45 and under, there are a lot of things that you can do, and actually in these situations you need to do to rectify the situation. It's not going to be easy, but in many cases you'll be able to, if you either find new employment, find higher paying employment, find and create additional sources of revenue. There's a lot of different things that you can do to put yourself in a better position to be able to afford your increased rent, or be able to afford rents wherever you're finding rental spaces available, even outside of the city if necessary. Then there's also the roommate option. But like I said, I will get in that in a moment. So real quick here on your screen, family, this is a chart that recently was published in the New York Times, just with a a variety of different locations around the country that listed the average rental or apartment rental rate in these different locations around the country. Keyword, average. Okay? And what I want you to focus in on, family, or what you need to focus in on, is this is the average rates. In most of these cities, you, or most of you who are listening to this report, you do not want to live in an apartment community or neighborhood with average rate rental amounts. For most of you listening, those apartment communities or neighborhoods with the average rates or amounts currently, those are not neighborhoods you want to live in. Those aren't safe neighborhoods. It's my estimate here, One Brothas Mind. What you need to do is take these average rates, or the average rate in your current city, and add about $400 to $500 to that average rate. And once you do that, you'll then be at a rate that's going to be about what you're going to be really looking at to try to find you a rental space or apartment that in most cases you will be comfortable living in that area. You're going to have the rates that are on your screen, or the average rate in your city. You're going to add about $400 or $500 to it. That's most cities. Now, when you're dealing with California, places in New York and a few other places, you're going to really need to add about another $1,000, maybe $1,500 to what is reported as the average rental rate in some of those larger cities to accomplish the same goal, to be able to try to afford to live in a neighborhood or an apartment community that you feel is safe or good for you and your children or what have you. Okay? Don't get tricked up by a lot of these reports like this that are telling you, well, the average rent here in Milwaukee is only $970. That's not bad. What they're not telling you is you don't want to live in the neighborhoods or the apartment communities where the rent is $970. Those are not that's not, bro. That ain't where you want to live for most of you. Now, if that's all you can afford, you listen to this and that's all you can afford, or is the average rate in your city, hey, it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. Get in where you fit in. But for those of us that can't afford or potentially afford a little bit more and want, because we can afford a little bit more, want to really have the choice of possibly living in a little bit better area or neighborhood, average is not what you're targeting. Okay? So keep that in mind. So again, the homeless rate among so-called black people, especially elderly black people, has already exploded and is just continuing to explode. You remember, family, we went through this pandemic and whatnot. They had that eviction memorial or whatever that was. What's that word? I can't spit it out right now. Where they had stopped the evictions temporarily in most places. That's over. That's been over for a long time everywhere. So that's why another reason why primarily the homeless rate, especially among so-called black people and elderly black people has exploded all of a sudden. And your mainstream liars, they're not reporting that aspect of it, because family, what you have to remember, for those of us in the black, so-called black community, when things are bad for our white brothers and sisters, they're absolutely hell for us. That's how it always has been. They're 2, 3, 10 times harder for us. Okay? So again, this homeless thing has exploded in most cities across the United States. Okay? So again, we gotta look for solutions. I mean, it should not be possible in the so-called richest country in the world where a person could work full-time their whole lives, and then toward the end of the end section or last stage or time, last years of their lives, last 10, 20, 25 years of their lives, all of a sudden they end up homeless. That should not even be possible, but that's what's happening to a lot of people, especially a lot of black people who have worked as just general laborers and doing different jobs or whatever they could find that pay low wage, or as I describe them, slave wages. And then now their health is gotten to a point, or they've gotten to a certain age, and trust me, for most of you, if you're listening, if you're not, haven't reached like age 50 yet and had to be out looking for a new job, pray that doesn't happen to you, because you'll discover that there's an age or ageism thing as well in the job market or employment in this country, where a lot of companies, they won't hire you because they feel, for whatever reason, that you may not be able to do the job or able to be productive enough or efficient enough at doing the job. Can't talk today. Specifically because of your age. So you will not get a whole lot of job opportunities, or let's say it this way, your job opportunities or employment opportunities will begin to shrink. They will begin to shrink. Man, I can't talk today. As you reach age 50 and older. Okay? Is that fair? Absolutely not. But that's a part of the reality that we have to face and deal with. Okay? So, of course, if at all possible, you want to try to lock down a job at at least by the time you're 40, that you can hopefully remain at and keep working there for as long as you can. As long as they'll have you, and not, don't mess that. If that's what you're doing, don't mess that job up. And now you 50, 55, 60 out here looking for another job. It's a nightmare. But that's what's happening to a lot of our elders. Big mama and them, big papa, your grandparents, even for many of us, our parents are falling into this situation, becoming homeless. Okay? And trust me, there's not enough services and assistance programs out there. It's just not. Okay? So, real quick, I want to touch on the roommate situation. It's my opinion here at One Brothas Mind that there's a lot of people, a lot of y'all solution to these higher rental rates and stuff is, I'm just going to get a roommate. We're going to do the roommate thing. Okay. Sometimes that ends up working out, but most of the time it does not. Most of the time it does not. And under most rental agreements or rental leasing contracts, when you bring in a roommate, or you and someone you know, whether it be a family member or a friend or acquaintance, whatever, when y'all go sign a lease to an apartment community, currently in most cities, both roommates sign their name to that lease, to that single lease. Okay? So then, everything's cool the first few weeks or whatever. All right. But then when it goes bad, when one of the roommates lose their job and can no longer pay, or something else is going on, they just stop paying, or they move out, or, a lot of times they just stop paying because they used to stop paying and just leave. And you come home and you're like, dang, they just moved like that. But because there's not really nowhere else to go now, and the prices of rents have increased so much, they'll stop paying, but still stay in y'all apartment that you are sharing. They won't leave. So now they're not paying their share of the rent, and you can't afford to pay for the whole rent yourself, the whole amount. So now you're stuck. And many of y'all are finding out, you go to your landlord, they're like, hey, y'all better figure out something, or because the rent is due, and if it ain't paid, both of y'all will be evicted. So now you're in a situation where you got to try to figure out and understand the laws and the rules of how to evict a roommate from the apartment and lease that you both signed and share. Which basically is, you got to take them to court. Just like a landlord has to take you to court to evict you, you got to take a roommate to court, to civil court, to evict them as your roommate, to get them off your lease. Right? Because you can't move a new roommate into your apartment before you evict the roommate that you currently have that's not paying. You cannot legally change the locks. You can't do none of that. Even though they're not paying their share of the rent, you can't make any adjustments until you get a legal ruling that evicts them from your apartment. So it's my advice here at One Brothas Mind. You don't want to be like that, but you got to kind of start operating, especially in a roommate situation, just like the landlord does. So if you have a roommate and they're just a couple of days late on their share of the rent, basically you got to go ahead and file for a hearing to get them evicted out of your shared apartment. You can't wait that first 30 days and then go file, because if you wait that long, you may not get your hearing in court in time enough before both of you get evicted. You have to go ahead, if they're just a couple days, 2 or 3 days late, you got to go ahead and file so you can get on the docket, get on the schedule, so that if they continue, they still haven't paid their rent and whatnot, and now your hearing date has come up and they still haven't paid, well, then you got your hearing. You can go ahead and demonstrate your case, hopefully get the ruling that they're now evicted from your apartment, and now you can return to your apartment, immediately change the locks, put their things out, or do whatever, tell them, put them somewhere where they can come get them, or whatever you got to do. And you can immediately start, if you hadn't already, which that's a good idea, already have a couple backup roommate options in line, to let, hey, I'm putting my current roommate out. It's going to be a couple more weeks. If they don't pay, they're going to be gone. So once I get them out, if you still ready and looking, you can go ahead and move in. And we can come on, do this thing, and you come on in and pay, and now you have the money to pay the rent, the full rent to the apartment community before you, the paying roommate, gets evicted. Do you see that? Again, if you try to wait and give your non-paying roommate, because they are your family member, a distant relative or friend or whatever, if you try to be nice and wait, in most cases, all that's going to happen is both of you are going to get evicted, because you're not going to be able to get a hearing fast enough to just get your roommate that's not paying evicted and taken off the lease. You're not going to be able to get that fast enough. You say, why, KD Smooth? Because the civil courts have exploded with cases, including roommate eviction cases like what I'm describing to you. Okay? So it takes time. It takes time to actually even be successfully get a non-paying roommate evicted from y'all apartment. You got to make sure you have enough time to successfully make that happen. So you got to be, in other words, you got to be stricter and act far more quickly than your actual apartment community to prevent you, the paying roommate, from being evicted also. Yeah, that's just kind of where we are now. That's just kind of where we are now. Okay? I mean, there's a lot of people going through this roommate situation because they thought their solution was, well, I can continue to live here where I'm currently living if I just sublease or bring a roommate in with me and somebody I know or think I know, and we can make it happen, and you know, everything kind of stays for me as it is. But those situations for the most part are not working out the majority of the time. Sometimes they do, but the majority of the times they don't work out. Okay? One additional note, if you find yourself in a situation, a roommate situation, and one roommate, well, let's say this, before there's a problem, do your best to try to save up about 4 months of your share of the rent. Just have that put back if you can, at least that. Because then if you get in a situation where you got a non-paying roommate, that 4 months of rent that you have saved, okay, will turn into 2 months of full rent that you can pay by yourself without you being evicted. And that'll help buy you some time to actually get the hearing completed and evict your non-paying roommate and bring in a new paying roommate to try to not have to be evicted and put out yourself. Okay? So that's another option. And one more solution option with these roommate situations that are not working out. Anytime you do a roommate situation, again, that same 4 months of your share of the rent that you guys saved up and whatnot or more, you get a roommate that ain't paid their share of rent and it's been 2 or 3 days, that's your alert to start looking for you a completely new apartment to rent. Yeah, you may have to break the lease and bounce, because you may find when you look into the first option that I spoke of as far as filing a case in civil court to evict your roommate, your non-paying roommate, that process may not happen fast enough before your apartment community evicts both of y'all. So you want to also immediately, when they are late on the rent, just a couple of days, you want to start looking, if you haven't already made a short list of other apartments or other locations that you can go and qualify for. And if they have vacancies, you can jump right into another apartment, because you may need to. Again, because you may not be able to get your non-paying roommate evicted and taken off your current lease in time before the apartment community or landlord kicks you both out or evicts you both. So you want to have each of these options, and you want to be working them. If you end up with a roommate that hasn't paid their share of the rent and they're just a few days late, you want to have all these things lined up. The more of these options you have in play and that you're working, the more options you will have in regards to a solution to a non-paying roommate that you have. Okay? But a lot of people, a lot of us family are getting caught up in this, and it's a nightmare. It could literally really negatively impact your life. It got you messing you up. You can't get to work on time. It can have all kind of stuff that's just stressful, just driving you crazy, man. So just some tips and some things to look out for. And again, on your screen, what I believe, there's no guarantee this is going to happen, but what I believe may begin to happen throughout most U.S. cities is this. This is a KD Smooth, One Brothas Mind exclusive. For some of you that are familiar with how apartments work on and near college campuses, it's kind of like what you see on your screen. This is an example. Okay? And I believe a lot of city apartments, due to how much the rents have increased, are going to start offering roommate, basically apartment agreements or leases that are specifically for roommates. And the key difference is, just like they do on or near college campuses, the roommate apartment leases, each roommate has their own individual lease. Yeah, for those who haven't heard of this, each roommate has their own separate lease. So if you got two roommates in this apartment on your screen, each of these bedrooms, the roommate that's in those, they have their own separate lease. So if you get one that starts to not pay their rent, that roommate is the only one that gets evicted. That one bedroom is the one that becomes empty. You, in the other bedroom, there's nothing that stops, nothing changes for you. You keep paying your regular rent. You don't get evicted. And what happens, the roommate apartment community, they will basically clean this now empty bedroom master suite. They'll clean it back up and get it ready for a new roommate. They may even give you some time as the current other roommate in the other, or still in the first bedroom number one, let's say that, to see if you can find someone else that you know, a relative or a friend or somebody, a coworker or something, that would like to also move in to the now empty master suite bedroom on, say, number 2, and become roommates with you, and you just keep on living like that, right? Because let's say this is this apartment, this two master suite apartment that you see on your screen, say it's $2,000 total. But because the apartment community is leasing it as a roommate option, a roommate lease, then each bedroom, that person is only paying $1,000 a month separately. So as long as you keep paying your $1,000 a month rate, you're never going to get evicted. The other person, if they mess up, they can get evicted and it doesn't bother you. You just keep on paying your regular $1,000 a month, and then either you or the apartment community will find another person to move into the empty bedroom, and they move in and start paying their $1,000 a month. That way, while one roommate, for whatever reason, stopped paying their rent, the other roommate that is still paying their share doesn't have to suffer an eviction. That's how a lot of apartments operate on and near college campuses. And I think potentially that's an option for apartments in the cities now. With how high the rents have gone, that's an option for them of how they may start operating. And you're looking at that going, what? Yeah. Now, as you see, you got two master suite bedrooms, right? One on each side. But in the middle, you have this living room and kitchen set. That's basically your common area. And in these type of lease or college roommate lease agreements, the common area is completely furnished by the apartment community. So you don't bring your living room furniture. No, everything that's in the common area in the middle belongs and is owned by the apartment community. That part is furnished. So the only thing you bring is what's in your bedroom in master suite. That's the only thing that comes with you. Okay? So I think there's a possibility that some apartments are going to start moving to this type of option because the apartment communities are having such a hard time. I mean, when you really look at it, as an apartment owner, as a rental space owner, which is better? Do you want to stay as things are and have roommates move in, one stops paying, and now you end up having to go through the trouble to evict them both and keep going through that situation over and over? Or do you want to do separate roommate leases, and if one stops paying, you only evict the one that's not paying, right? So you're still collecting money from the one that is still paying. So now all you got to do is refill the empty master suite with a new roommate. So you don't have to get the courts involved and go through that whole drama. You evict that one, they're gone. You get a new roommate. And most of these times, if it's a lady, if it's two ladies, they try to keep it just two ladies. Or if it's two guys, they keep it two guys. Most of the time, they're not going to try to mix them up, put a dude on one side and a lady on the other side. That could start to cause a whole lot of additional problems, obviously. But I think a lot of apartments are going to start to look at this type of option, this separate roommate lease option, and go, you know what? We can save ourselves a whole lot of time, a whole lot of trouble. We don't have to wrestle with the courts. We can just, if a roommate can't pay or stop paying, move just that one out. Evict just that one. And then just get another one and keep on moving. It's a whole lot less of a headache. So potentially, this type of situation could take off soon. Okay. And also, that's another note in regards to if you're out there looking for places, someplace, a rental space or apartment or whatever, ask every landlord or apartment community you go to, do they have this option for roommates? Separate lease roommate options. Do they offer that? Because you might be surprised. Some of them may already be offering this type of setup. And that definitely, if you're going to be dealing with roommates, you're going to be able to find a more affordable rents, because you're only basically renting a master suite in a common area. You're not paying for a 2-bedroom apartment. You saw what I'm saying? So basically the rent, like I said, on this one, it could be $2,000 a month, but you're only responsible for $1,000 on your lease. You see how that works? So just a couple quick nuggets on the whole roommate aspect and some things that may begin to happen more and more. Something to ask about and keep an eye out for. So again, one more time, be sure that you understand when you're looking at reports and information about average rental rates in your city or whatever city. For most of y'all really don't want to live in the locations that are the average price. Because like for myself here, I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. Our average rate is reportedly this year the same as it is in Milwaukee, $970. I can tell you right now, I would not live in an apartment today that the rate is $970. That's not, I would not consider that a safe apartment community or neighborhood. And most people who could afford more, most of us feel that way. Now, if I could not afford more than that, I'm jumping all over it. I got to do what I got to do. I got to get in where I can get in and deal with what I got to deal with. Right? So don't forget that piece. Now, the other side of these rental increases is how is this affecting our elderly? So-called black people, elderly black people. How is this affecting them? Because a lot of our elderly are retired, they're on fixed incomes, and when the landlords jack up the rent, they no longer can afford the rent. So they have to move. Where are they gonna go? Especially nowadays when everywhere in the city the rents have increased. So they can't find nowhere in the city to go that they can afford as far as rental units. This is what's happening today. And actually, it's even worse than that for a lot of our elderly and retired so-called black people. There's a lot of couples, elderly couples, and they're both collecting their retirement checks. So they got 2 checks coming in. 2 Social Security checks, that fixed income, it's double. And even though they got 2 checks coming in, combined, they still can't afford the increase in their rent cost. The new amounts the landlords just threw on them. So they still, even together, I saw a report just about probably a week or so ago where there was this, actually it was an elderly white couple. They had been together for decades, living in this one space, and everything was cool, but the landlord sent them a notice, jacked up the rent on them, and even though they both was receiving checks, that were of course fixed income, they no longer together could afford with 2 checks the new rent increase. So they had to, they were evicted. They had to leave. They were forced to leave. And what was extra devastating and sad about the situation was being forced to leave. The lady, because they definitely couldn't afford to go anywhere else on their own. They couldn't find anywhere else to go rent and be able to afford it with both of their checks. So they literally, the cost of rent increasing in their city forced them to have to separate. The lady ended up working out a situation where she actually moved back in with one of her children. I believe it was one of her daughters. She moved back in with one of her daughters, and the guy, the elderly guy, he didn't have that option. They asked him where he was going to go. He was like, well, I've been talking to the assistance programs and the shelter peoples. Most of them are full, but they're working on trying to find me a spot. So in the meantime, all he had was a truck. He said, in the meantime, I'll just be in my truck. And this guy was like in his late 60s. This is happening. Family, this type of stuff is happening, especially to our elders out here in these streets. So again, that's why I wanted to focus on, man, this information, this issue that we need to talk about and start to look at what are some potential solutions. And as far as, one solution I'll talk about toward the end of this report for our elders. But again, if you're like 40 years old and younger, for the most part, getting a new job, getting a higher paying job, establishing additional income sources, roommate options, there's a lot of possibilities there still available. But as you age, you get up there, them options start to not be options anymore. So what are you going to do? That's why if you look at news reports, they're talking about it. They're not being specific. They're just saying the homeless numbers are increasing or exploding or whatever on mainstream media, but they're not being specific. I would argue most of the new homeless are so-called black people. It's us, y'all. Majority. It's a little bit of everybody. Don't get it twisted. But the majority, if you really look at the numbers, it's us. So we got to look to do things, to take steps ahead of time to prevent ourselves from falling into these situations. Okay? We have to. We can't wait until we get the notice and then go, and now we got a couple of months to try to figure something out. And it's so bad that even it's just begun here recently. A lot of cities are passing new laws and making up new laws where landlords, the amount or percentage of rental increase, they're putting caps on those, saying a landlord can only increase maybe 20%, and that's it. Because a lot of landlords, there wasn't laws that said what was, that limited how much a landlord could just change the rent, increase your rent. So landlords was just going, bam, here you go, $500,000 increase. You're like, wait, what? I can't afford that. Sorry. That's been happening for the last couple of years through the pandemic and since, right? But now again, a lot of cities and states are passing these laws going, no, y'all creating a explosion in the homeless community by increasing these rents to exorbitant amounts. So, and trust me, landlords are trying to fight back on that, going, wait a minute, this is my property. You can't tell me or control how much I charge for my property. It's mine. I own it. So there's definitely a major political back and forth that's happening, but a lot of cities and a lot of states are passing these laws because it's a nightmare problem going on, right? So again, we got to look to position ourselves, family, so that we don't find ourselves in these situations at the last minute. Okay? And for our elders, this is what's happening. What's on your screen, this is what's happening to us. Because you don't have the option to just go out and get a better, higher paying job after certain ages. Okay? You don't. If you're working at all. So it's a nightmare out there. It really is currently. And yeah. So the other side to this that I want to discuss with you this evening, family, get you to pay attention to, focus on, again, is the impact of these rental increases on our elders. And in addition to that, a lot of our elders actually own their excuse me, they actually own their homes. And a lot of our elders, once they retire and they have a fixed income, through gentrification, their property taxes are being increased and to a point where they can't afford their property tax anymore. So then they're losing the home that they actually bought and paid for in full. They have the deed on it and they're still losing their home. So we're going to move into discussing that issue here in just a moment. We're going to do that after this brief non-commercial commercial break. We'll come back with you and continue here at One Brothas Mind in just a moment. To continue, as I previously stated, whether it's rental increases or property tax increases, this is what many of our elders, this is what they're looking at or facing when they're getting evicted due to rent increases or property tax increases is causing them to lose their homes. There's nowhere else to go but some sort of nursing home, assisted living, low income living option where if you're lucky, you got a small room like on the right of your screen that's just a single private room for you that has a little twin bed and a dresser and a chair in it. And or even worse, you end up in a double bedroom, a double occupant room, and now you have a roommate of someone that is also elderly who you don't know. Man. And literally either of these situations, this is why our grandparents and elderly parents and what have you, this is the end result that everybody dreads. No, this is not how we're trying to end up or finish out our days. Right? After working your whole life, this is what's come to? Nah, bruh. So, with that, like I said, we're transitioning now to discussing how a lot of our elders are losing homes that they actually own, homes they worked their whole lives for. They did them 30-year mortgages and they actually paid them off. They have the deed and they own that house. They own that property. It's theirs. But here in America, even once you've done that, you still have to pay annually or semi-annually property tax to your state property tax. Okay. And I'm going to dig into the whole property tax game and how, or at least one way, it's used and results in our so-called black elders losing their houses, their properties, big mama, big papa, whatever you call your grandparents. Okay? Here we go. All right, so this could be Big Mama's house right here. And this is what'll happen to her. Big Mama's house is here, and if Big Mama's property tax, if Big Mama is unable to keep up with her property tax, she gets behind on it. After a certain period of time, the city or state will come down and literally seize Big Mama's house, evict Big Mama from it, put her stuff out, and that's it. Big Mama now has to find somewhere else to live, somewhere else to go. She's literally looking at a house that she and maybe her and Big Papa, they literally worked their whole lives and paid for that house in full. But just because they owe or have gotten behind on their property tax and owe $2, $3, maybe $4,000 worth in property tax that Big Mama or they can no longer afford to keep up on, they lose the whole house. The city or state comes and takes the whole house. This is happening all over the U.S. And we gotta put a stop to this, family. Most of the times we are able to put a stop to this from happening and having Big Mama or Big Papa end up in one of these situations. When they done busted their butt, worked hard, helped take care of you. And now, when they're at a place in their lives where it's now, they're struggling to keep up with their property tax, they end up losing their whole house, their whole property, everything they worked for. We can, in most cases, we can prevent this from happening, family, is my point. You say, well, how? Well, we're going to talk about that. Okay? So, again, what you have to understand about this issue up front, we're talking about property tax or property tax increases, property tax debts and seizures. If Big Mama gets behind on her property tax or gets to a point where her fixed income, she can no longer afford to pay to buy food and pay her utilities, and pay the property tax for some reason. For most of our grandparents and our elders, that's extremely embarrassing. Extremely embarrassing, and many of them don't say anything about it. They don't tell nobody. They won't tell us. They'll just sit there. And it's just happening. And the property tax debt is slowly increasing over time. Okay? So, to respond to that, you gotta, whether you're the child or the grandchild, we gotta start talking to our elders, start having conversations with them, asking them how are they doing. Now, for many of our elders, when you start asking about their financial situation and how things are going for them, like I said, they're gonna be real. A lot of them are gonna be like, "What you talking about? Don't get in my. It's personal. You don't ask me about my stuff, my business, right?" But you gotta keep going. So look, big mama, I'm just trying to check on you, make sure you're okay, because a lot of people are my friend's grandmother. She lost her house. I don't want that to happen to you. She lost it because give them an example. She got behind on her property tax and she couldn't afford to catch it up or pay it anymore, and she just lost her whole house. They came and took it. I don't want that to happen to you, big mama. So I'm asking you how you doing, if you're okay with it, if everything's going okay with it. Let me know what's going on, because if you are having some struggles with your property tax or paying your bills and stuff right now, if you tell me early, or tell us, you make it a whole, what they call an intervention type thing. If you tell us now before it gets out of hand, we or I may be able to help you. Even if I gotta pay a bill or two for you every month, and help you. I may be able to help you. Or if I have to help you pay your property tax, what have you. But the one thing please don't do is if you be sitting here struggling and your property tax is falling behind and you just don't say nothing, and then next thing you know, you calling me and talking about your property tax, you got $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 property tax bill that's due tomorrow, or they're gonna evict you. I may not be able to help then. I may not have that kind of money just sitting around to be able to help you. So talk to me, tell me now. Let's I'm gonna keep asking you about this so that we can keep up on it and make sure you're okay. All right? And some of them you're gonna have to have these talks over and over again and keep trying and many times before they'll finally open up and start telling you the truth, or if they are experiencing some troubles there, or just the fact that they do just need some help managing their bills and expenses and stuff now. I know for myself personally, me and my sibling, we went through with my mother, as she continued to age, we started having these conversations. And what was crazy is neither myself or my sibling, neither of us knew that we both had started asking and having these conversations with our mother. They were independent because we both were concerned. We both were trying to make sure she was all right. And then we had been doing it for years, and she was blocking both of us. She wasn't opening up, telling neither one of us nothing, because she was stuck in that mindset. Ain't nobody taking my house. She knew of other people, other elderly family members that their kids hoodwinked them and end up taking and stealing their house and stuff from us. Like, oh no, ain't nobody. This is my house. Mind your business. So it took us years of working on our mother, and then again, as she aged, there's some additional struggles came in to play, like with health and whatnot. And thankfully, when those started to come in, it got real for her, and she was like, okay, I do need help. I got to open up to at least one of them and let them start helping me. And it turned out to be my other sibling, which was fine with me, because none of me or my siblings had any interest in trying to take her house or anything from her. We were just trying to make sure she was good and whatnot, because we all already had purchased our own homes previously, so that wasn't the issue. We were just trying to make sure our mother was good. But she eventually opened up to one of us, and that sibling ended up stepping in and helping her organize bills, putting on auto pay stuff, and just doing everything that we could do to help make things easier for us, so she didn't have to worry or remember all this stuff and whatnot. Set her up with direct deposits with her income, so she didn't, because my mother came from the generation where they went to the bank every time they got a check. Cash deposit, pay bills, they did all that. Every Friday, every other Friday, they went to the bank. It's like, you don't have to do that no more. We can set this stuff on auto pay and direct deposit, and it just does it for you. So we were able to help her a lot with organizing those things, or at least my other sibling was. And my hat's off. I salute my other sibling. I appreciate him and the work he put in and time he put in to help our mother, because he just happened to be the one she opened up to and was like, okay. Because we kind of took turns for a while. I was going hard and heavy trying to work on our mother, and she was still like, nah, I ain't telling y'all nothing. And then I would get frustrated and kind of pull back, and then once I would be frustrated, my brother would kick in. So we never let up on it. It's just that, it gets frustrating out of it. It does get frustrating, but you don't attack your parent or nothing like that. You just step back, breathe, step back, and let your other sibling or relative step in. Let them take their turn, and you take turns until that elder or parent opens up to somebody. Okay? So, but expect resistance is my point. Just a little personal story there. I've been through it. Okay? Expect oftentimes resistance, but you can't give up. You got to keep trying. Don't get disrespectful because it's frustrating and whatnot. You kind of see the lights from the train coming down the track. You just like trying to help them get out the way and get to safety, and they are still resisting. And it's like, come on, man, you got step back, take a break from it and then go back at it. Don't make an enemy out of your grandparents or your elderly parent. Okay? Because all you're there really to do is try to help. So again, Big Mama house, Big Papa house. This is what's happening, especially to those of us in the so-called black community, because of reasons that I've just laid out. Okay? And some additional reasons it's happening because the neighborhoods where our elders are living at, many of them are being gentrified. Many of them are being gentrified, and that's what's causing their property tax to drastically increase. Like, for example, some of you have heard about literally Harlem in New York. There was all black owned properties. And then all of a sudden the gentrification began. And once the gentrification began, the property taxes in Harlem literally started to double and triple and quadruple. So now those property owners that prior to gentrification was able to comfortably afford their property tax every year, now at some point they could no longer afford to pay it and keep up with it. So many of them had to sell their properties or they just lost them. They got seized. So for those that don't know, I'm going to give you a brief breakdown of gentrification and how it works and why it works, why it is, okay? So you can clearly understand what's happening to a lot of our elders, okay, and parents and grandparents and whatnot. So say this Big Mama house, she owns it, right? It's paid for, she has the deed, and now all of a sudden, the early stages of gentrification began to happen. Or say it could be a neighborhood like this. Oftentimes, Big Mama's neighborhood is like this. Yeah, And you say, well, for some of my listeners, you say, how did the black neighborhood get towed down like this? The primary answer is the city economically starved that black neighborhood. Okay? That's your answer. The city did it. It was on purpose. And some of you are going, wait, what? How could that happen? Well, when the city no longer and purposely stops economically investing and developing in certain neighborhoods, mostly black neighborhoods, in the city, what end up happening in those situations, the neighborhood starts to run down. A lot of businesses with jobs, they leave, they withdraw from those neighborhoods. The few businesses that remain in those neighborhoods are low wage paying jobs or employers. And they may only have, they're only small mom and pop type businesses. So they may only have a couple of employment spots to offer that are low wage. In addition, the homeowners in our neighborhoods like this, they'll say, well, let me just go try to get a loan, and I can use from the bank, I can use the loan to fix my house back up, revitalize it, and make it good and stuff like that. And I'll put my house up as collateral, or maybe they got something else to put up as collateral to get the loan, and the bank will still deny the loan because they'll say, well, that house's current value is not enough collateral to secure. Say if the current value is say $40,000, but you need about $50,000 or $60,000 to fix it back up, or at least that's what the bank is telling you, they'll deny those loans. So you can't get the loan to fix your property back up. So a lot of people in black neighborhoods are stuck, and the neighborhood just continues and continues to deteriorate. You got failing schools. The values of all of these homes in the neighborhood just continue to decrease, right? So the city purposely is economically starving many black neighborhoods throughout the country like this. The city is not giving incentives for businesses to locate within these neighborhoods, especially businesses that have median or family wage sustaining jobs that pay wages that you can sustain a family with. They're not incentivizing businesses to locate themselves in these black neighborhoods so that the black residents in the neighborhoods can go and get those jobs and work those jobs and now have the resources to upgrade or repair their homes or what have you. It's happening on purpose. Okay? I'll give you another personal example. As I speak right here in this report, I am sitting in the home that I own, the home that I have the deed on. And it's actually the home, it was originally my parents' home, right? Now, in the area that I live in, not only is it a food desert, and I explained that on a previous video, but the area that I lived in at one point in time, I'd say about 30 to 40 years ago, the area that my home currently is in, the neighborhood, the area, the community, was a central community in the city, a central economic community in Indianapolis, Indiana. And the reason why it was a central community that many people were trying to get into was because approximately about a 15-minute drive from my current home that I own, that my parents owned, a 15-minute drive east of my home, you would arrive at the area where about 6 different auto plant manufacturers had their manufacturing plants located, right? In which my father was employed at one of those. Okay. So most of the people in this area from about 15 minutes out, and as you travel closer to those auto plants, this whole area, most of the people, especially most of the men in these areas, they worked at these auto plants, making that crazy paper, right? Back in the day, right? So it was a bustling, great area, right? Middle class and up, okay? So at some point, though, these 6 auto plant manufacturers, they all, one by one, closed the auto plants and relocated. Most of them outside the country. Y'all remember that happened? You get into the whole NAFTA and CAFTA scenarios and laws that were put in place by our government. If you don't know what those are, research NAFTA, NAFTA, and CAFTA, CAFTA. Research those, you'll find out it's basically the government started to not only authorize but incentivize and make it easier for U.S. companies to go move their operations and manufacturing overseas somewhere for cheaper labor. They started helping make that easier with those programs. So in my area, those 6 auto plants, one by one, they shut down and closed. So all of that all of that income for all of those workers left this entire area over a short period of a few years. They're just gone. And some workers relocated with those companies that were given that opportunity. They just went wherever the company was going. That's where they went. But my father stayed because he was closer to retirement age. He was like, nah, I'm going to go ahead and try to ride it out and just retire before they close. Okay. So he did that successfully. But then when those 6 auto plants closed down, the money left this entire side of the city. Okay? The economics left. So now, okay, let me say this also. Like I said, I'm about 15 minutes away from where those plants were. While those plants was there and still operational, as you would drive closer, when you get to 10 minutes and 5 minutes close to those where those plants were located, as you got closer, the wider the homeowners or neighborhoods became. So basically, 5 minutes or so distance from those auto plants was mostly white neighborhoods, predominantly white neighborhoods. And then as you moved out a little further, that's when black homeowners, the neighborhoods slowly began to turn black. Well, when that economic base, when those auto plants left, all or majority of the white homeowners, they also left, relocated. Either they went with the job or they just went to some other part of the city or a suburb, right? And so as those white homeowners and renters left, more black people moved in. So the whole area in this 15-minute travel space that I'm speaking of became predominantly black. And actually about right around where you get about 10 to 15 minutes from the location of my home, that area is now today considered one of the worst areas in the entire city. One of the most dangerous areas because the economics are gone. So you got all primarily low income people still living there. And family, they just trying to survive. There's no opportunity there, no jobs, no nothing, hardly. There's actually a recent news report, if you guys saw it. There was a little jackleg, like fish fry business. I forget the name of it. I never ate at those places, but it was just literally in the news. The one where they showed in the back of the kitchen, they had the food on the floor and they were serving customers. That one. That's the area that I'm speaking of. That's about 10 minutes east of 15 minutes east of my current home location. I don't go over that area. I don't shop at that place. I don't eat at them places. But that neighborhood area is considered the worst, one of the worst areas in Indianapolis, and has been for years. Because that's how they get down over there, especially in some of the businesses. That's not every business, but yeah, hey, y'all figure it out. I mean, woo, it's rough over there. I admit that it is rough over there. All right, but like I said, it's at least about a 15-minute drive away from my neighborhood, so I'm kind of cool. But it's a rough neighborhood. So it got rough because that neighborhood was closer and in good proximity to those 6 auto plants. But when they left, all those high-paying jobs left. Boom! Now you have an economically starved community area. And the city has purposely, over the last 3 or 4 decades, not incentivized and reinvested in companies coming in to build new manufacturing or warehousing hubs that bring jobs, good paying jobs. They purposely not put think about it. You got just take one major auto manufacturing plant, the size of that lot. You could put a sports arena on the size of that lot or space that those plants used to hold, right? So it's not a matter of, is there enough space? It's space out the wazoo over there where those plants used to be. So that's not it. So why is the city not saying and trying to court and bring businesses and companies that's looking for new locations to put, operation centers or manufacturing hubs or whatever in cities Why are they not saying, well, hey, we got some spaces over here in this community right here. We'll help you settle in here. Bunch of tax breaks or what's called corporate welfare. Whole bunch of tax incentives and things. We'll help pay your building costs if you just go ahead and pick this location and build and start up here and bring these jobs here. So the residents in this community, which happen to be black, will have opportunity and access to the jobs, and it's a great workforce. Whatever. Why haven't they done that? Most of y'all already know why. Because it's a black community. It's black residents. They economically starve our communities on purpose, right? So then our communities, our homes and things start to run down. Now, is that saying every, say, child in a community, neighborhood like this on your screen is just stuck? No. Many of our children, in these situations go to school and they excel at school and they put themselves in a position to go off to colleges. And when they go off to college, they figure college out and they are successful in college. They get degrees. Now, here's the question. Now, many kids from this neighborhood who graduated college and they have degrees, or they went to trade schools and got skilled trade certificates, are they going to come right back to this neighborhood and live where they grew up in? Or are they going to say, no, I'm going over to these better neighborhoods here, or they have better living conditions? Yeah. So even our own family relocates because the city is economically starving many of our historical black communities and whatnot like this, right? So you may be thinking, well, if the city is economically starving many of the black communities around the country, and it gets to the point like this or worse, what have you, which there's a lot of places that's worse than what you see on your screen, right? Then this neighborhood, this community is just done for. It's nothing, you can't do nothing with it. Ain't nothing gonna happen. It's gonna stay like this, right? That's where you would be wrong. Because, okay, let me back up. When it gets like this, and the property values of these homes and this community drop to their lowest level, like you got as you can see, a lot of these are really big, huge houses. We got areas in here in Indianapolis. We have like the old large homes like this. They're like Victorian homes. And they were owned about 30 years ago by mostly black owners. And they started to run down. They didn't get this bad, but they started to run down due to the economic starvation, right? Then this happens. I'm literally explaining to you how gentrification works in America. Once those properties and their value get to their lowest amounts, and you can go, a lot of our white brothers and sisters will come in to those neighborhoods and go, oh, that's a big, beautiful house. If we fix that up, oh my God, look at all of these wonderful, big, large floor plans and homes. They just need to be restored, right? So then, in addition to that, many of our white brothers and sisters say, here we are, way out in the suburbs living, and we got an hour or more commute to get into the city or downtown or uptown, whatever y'all call it, to get to our jobs and our businesses. Why should we stay way out there when we could just move in, buy these properties up for cheap, fix them back up, revitalize these properties, and then we can live here and we'll only be 10 or 15 minutes away from our jobs and businesses in downtown, uptown, or the city areas. That's better for us to do it that way, right? Especially when gas prices go up. That's when a lot of our white brothers and sisters will start looking in these neighborhoods, right? And now the black homeowners that are still owning these homes will be here, and white brothers and sisters will come in and say, they'll look up how much the property value is. Say the property value is, say, $40,000 on this, or $30,000 on this boarded up house, or $20,000. It could be real cheap because nobody's actually even living there, right? And the value on it is like, for the owner, is only like $20,000, right? So the white brothers and sisters will come in and say, I'll give you 20 or 25,000, or they, a lot of times they even are good negotiators. They'll go, I'll give you 15,000 for it, or 18. You know, they save some money. Here, boom. And the property owner, if there's still a property owner, if the city doesn't own it, the property owner will go, okay, I can't fix it up for the reasons I've previously explained. So they'll take the money and leave. So now white brothers and sisters own that first house. And they'll spend 6-8 months, maybe even a year, refurbishing and restoring this big, beautiful home and property, right? And once it's restored, they'll move into it. Now it's closer to their jobs, their businesses. It's twice the square, 2-3 times the square footage of the house that they own out in the suburbs, right? So this is how gentrification will begin. You get one white family, brothers and sisters. You get two, one over here, one down the block here. It'll start bing, bing, bop, bop, bop. It'll start happening, right? And pretty soon, all of the houses that were previously black owned in this neighborhood are now owned, and you got a bunch of construction bins and projects going on in every yard. They're putting the roofs on, they're doing everything. They gut the houses if that's what it needs, and revitalize it from that point, right? And say they bought the house for $20,000, the property, the whole property, $20,000, right? So now they take and put $20,000 or $30,000 in redeveloping and revitalizing the home and the property to make it look all brand new again, right? So now totally our white brothers and sisters have put in maybe $50,000 into that house, right? And this is happening in every one of those houses on that block, on all the blocks nearby in that whole community, right? So as the revitalization and redevelopment of these old, previously black-owned homes is happening, our same white brothers and sisters have the connections, and they go to the city and they go, okay, we're buying properties and homes in this area, in this neighborhood over here. But there's a lot more that this neighborhood needs. The streets need to be fixed. Bike routes need to be put in. There's a long list of stuff. New trees, whatever. The streets need to be clean. All of this stuff. New sidewalks. They'll go to the city, our white brothers and sisters, and guess what will happen? The city will go, okay, yeah, we can do that. We've been wanting to revitalize that neighborhood and invest in it. Cap, that's a cap. But now that the properties are primarily owned and being bought by white brothers and sisters, now the city is no longer economically starving that area. They're economically investing in the redevelopment of that area. All kind of new businesses and health clinics and all kind of stuff starts happening. They fix the streets, the same streets that had nuclear chuck holes in them for 30, 40 years. And never, all they would do, they would come by and put that little loose black top in the chuck hole that would only sit in the chuck hole for about 2 or 3 months. And then as cars drive over that loose blacktop, it just pulls out of that chuck hole, and then you got that chuck hole just as it was originally again. Every year. Now they're coming in, ripping up the entire street and putting in brand new streets, brand new sidewalks, trees, and bus lanes and bike lanes. They're economic investment and redevelopment starts happening. Then, as the neighborhood, like I said, fills up with now white owners, white brothers and sisters who own these previously dilapidated properties. Again, the city starts making plans like this. Oh, we're going to put a new office complex, a new health clinic over here. They make a design. They make a drawing. We're going to do this area like this now. We've been wanting to do this plan for a long time. Well, why didn't you do it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, while all the homes were owned by the black residents? Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Many of you already know. So they make plans, they start building out, they set it up, and then within approximately 10 years of economic redevelopment and investment, now the neighborhood, that same crazy looking neighborhood, has been gentrified. It looks great. It looks like the place to live. It's a place where most people want to go buy a house in, no matter their race. It's wonderful. It's cleaned up. Everything's nice. You see on your screen in the black and white picture, that was Big Mama's house. That was her property. But then Big Mama lost it because of gentrification, or she lost it because she couldn't keep up with the property tax increases, what have you. And after a while, it ran down a little bit. The property value went down, and then some white brothers and sisters came in and bought it either from Big Mama or bought it from the state, just for the amount of taxes that was owed. Say that black and white picture there, say Big Mama owed $4,000 in taxes. She had got behind. And so the state seized Big Mama's house in the black and white picture. So now anybody, it doesn't matter what your race is, but anybody can come in and buy Big Mama's house for $4,000. All the city wants is this tax money. That's what they'll have, property tax sales. So now, most often, white brothers and sisters will come in, they'll buy Big Mama's house for $4,000. That's a hell of a steal. And then they'll take another $20,000, $30,000, as you see on your right. That's where Big Mama's house was. Now look at the house. They redeveloped it, reinvested it, built it up. It looks brand new. Like a brand new house. All because they only paid $4,000 to get Big Mama's house originally, to get the house. So now they can spend the rest of the money and build up and make it look how they want it to look. And every house in the neighborhood is being done this way. It's been gentrified. It's been gentrified. So that's how, in many of our prominently black-owned neighborhoods, that's what's happening. I mean, you can have, like I said, in this before and after, you see a lot of us, our grandparents own houses like this on the bottom. Beautiful, big, huge houses. But because it's a predominantly black neighborhood, this house is only worth $75,000 per se, as an example, right? Because everybody in this neighborhood, all the property owners, homeowners, they're all black. So it's only worth $75,000. But then once it gets lost or sold because of gentrification, property tax increase, things of that nature, now some of our white brothers and sisters will come in, buy it for that cheaper price, invest in it because they have the resources, the money to do it. Can you say our reparations? And now in the top picture after, look, it's beautiful because somebody had the money. And in this case, or in most cases, it's our white brothers and sisters to actually reinvest into the property. And oh, by the way, this reinvestment is happening in this entire neighborhood. So within about a 10, 15 year span, this entire neighborhood turns from 99% black owned to now 99% white owned. And when it becomes predominantly white owned, the property value magically goes from $75,000 to $500,000. Now remember, they bought this property for $75,000. They probably put about $20,000 in revitalizing it. So they got about $95,000 in it. And then 10 years later, it's worth $400,000 or $500,000 because it's a predominantly white neighborhood. They just came up. They just made $300,000+ on their investment. And many of my white listeners, y'all sitting here listening on, yep, that's exactly, yeah, that's a great idea. What's wrong with that? We're putting our time and money in it. What's wrong with that? It's only possible, this is to my white listeners, it's only possible because the city previously was economically starving the black homeowners in that black neighborhood. So essentially, many of you are benefiting or taking advantage of the city's racism. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I said it. There you have it, family. That's a brief description of gentrification and how we as black homeowners keep losing our properties and keep having to bounce around to other new areas to find places to live and whatnot. While white families, white brothers and sisters they can take the same dirt, the same bricks, and within 10, 15 years, it's worth 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times the original value it was worth when it was predominantly a black neighborhood. In other words, it's a setup. It's a game they've been playing for years. In fact, in many neighborhoods now in the U.S., this before pick, I know this is in a lot of the historical neighborhoods here in Indianapolis. Say during the before pick, Big Mama owned this house, right? Big Mama, Big Papa, our grandparent. But actually, if you go back even further in history, originally this before home was actually owned, and this before neighborhood was actually a predominantly white neighborhood, historically. And we all know how that goes. That's great for a while. But then one by one house at a time, when black families start to move in or be able to afford and allowed to buy homes in predominantly white neighborhoods in the city, most of our white brothers and sisters, y'all have to ask them why they do this, but most of them, when they see a certain number of black homeowners move into neighborhoods, they go, uh-oh, there goes the neighborhood, and they leave. They sell their homes and they go move out to what many places call suburban areas. They get out of they see the wave coming. They go, here come the black people again. Y'all ask them why they don't want to continue to live in the same neighborhoods as black people. Yeah, I'm going to break it down to you. But so again, my point is, a lot of times, even before our grandparents, our black grandparents owned this before home, it was originally, with the development of the city, historically, it was an all white neighborhood. And then slowly but surely, when black families got those rare opportunities and started to move in, and over time, it became a black neighborhood. But when black people moved in, the black homeowners, our grandparents and what have you, they paid the real current value of this home on the bottom. Whatever it was valued at when it was owned by white homeowners, when black people move in, our grandparents had to pay that exact value. They did not get no break, no discount. It wasn't ran down. The value hadn't drastically dropped. They paid whatever the current value was, the real value. Right? But then as our grandparents got in and our families lived there and it became a whole black community, the property values, due to economic starvation in the neighborhood, the property values began to decline. And it was done on purpose, right? They got down, say, the next example, to 75,000. Say when the black people moved in, when the neighborhood was originally created and it was predominantly white owned, say the value, say was maybe $250,000 initially in perspective, right? So then when black families started to move in, they had to pay $250,000 for the home because that's what the current value was, right? So now they got in, they worked hard, they paid that off. They got the deed on this house now. But now that the neighborhood 20, 30, 40 years later had became predominantly black neighborhood, the city economically starved the neighborhood. The property values dropped all the way down to like $75,000. So our grandparents lost their investment in this house. You see how that works? And once it got so bad, or our grandparents could no longer keep up with the property tax or whatever the case was, now the city comes in and seizes the property for property tax delinquency. They seize the property for like $4,000 worth of property tax. That's all. Right? And then here comes new white brothers and sisters come in and go, how much the city wants for this house? $4,000. White brothers go home, babe, I just found this great property. It is only $4,000 for property tax. We get that. We own it. They go, what? Nigga takes his wife out. She go, oh, wow, this is amazing. This is beautiful. Old style home is huge. It's got crazy square footage. It's going to take a lot of work, but we can probably put about $20,000, maybe $25,000 into it to fix it back up. And wow. Hey, they're doing it down the street here too. Somebody else is doing it. Yeah, these are great homes. Just especially once we fix them back up. Next thing you know, the black neighborhood becomes, as you see on the top, predominantly white again. And when that happens, the property values explode back up really high again. Magically. That's gentrification. Okay? So, again, what's on your screen, family? I've been telling people this and trying to explain this to many people. I got black people, many of them, that argue with me still to this day about this. And I stand on my square on this. I've seen it happen too many times. Basically exactly how I've explained it to you. Okay? So, you say, well, what determines property value? It's right on your screen. Racism. Is that surprising? Is that not surprising to you here in America? Everything, for the most part, is controlled by racism when it comes to economics in America. Now, you listen to a whole bunch of so-called foo-foo, so-called think they're intelligent black people. They'll argue with you all day and say it's all these other factors over here on the left. They'll come up with crazy little equations, all kind of stuff, when there's only one reason. Now,
If they include, well, they're usually going to include location or the neighborhood. That's code. That's code speak. The location in the neighborhood is it a predominantly white neighborhood? Is it a predominantly black neighborhood? In general. If it's a predominantly white neighborhood, the property values are elevated. If it's a predominantly black neighborhood, they are significantly decreased. Okay? Now, you put this to your peoples, your peoples that think they know, especially black people, think they smart. And ask them, show them this part of the video and ask them what determines property value in America. What determines the property value here in America is it a neighborhood or location where our white brothers and sisters want to live, where they desire to live? If it is, the property value in the area is going to be escalated up. That's why most parts, the mortgages and property tax and property values in all of California and most parts of New York are so high, because these are places in Florida. These are in a lot of parts of Texas. These are places where most of our white brothers and sisters want to live. They're desired. Why are they desired is the question that's not asked. The answer to that is because they're predominantly white neighborhoods. It's racism. Now, you can ask a lot of our white brothers and sisters, they go, oh, I don't really care who my neighbors are. It could be black neighbors, Hispanic neighbors. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not racist. You don't have to be. This is a part of what I'm explaining and describing to you, especially to my white listeners. This is a part of systematic racism. This is a system that's been set up from day one that operates racially without you individually having to do anything about it. Okay? So, yeah, you may not care who your neighbors are, honestly. And I don't know you. I don't doubt you. I don't know you. Right? But how many black Americans can afford to buy that $300,000, $500,000, or $700,000 house that's next door to your house? A very, very small percentage. And because of those high property values, that's what's used to exclude most black homeowners from becoming homeowners in predominantly white neighborhoods, because they can't afford the values. And those high values are generally set, some would argue, by the market, but again, it's by racism. If it's a predominantly white neighborhood and a white family is looking for a new home to buy, when they search the city and they identify predominantly white neighborhoods, they go to the neighborhood, they look at houses that are for sale, they go, okay, they say this house is worth $300,000. It's on sale for $300,000, right? And our white brothers and sisters, as a couple or family, they'll say, we're offering $300,000. Here you go. And the real estate agent will go, okay, great. I'll let you know in a couple of days. And then that same couple will get a call, probably usually a few hours later, go, hey, we just had a higher offer. Someone increased their offer. So the property basically is going to go to or be sold to the highest bidder, because there's a bunch of white potential homeowners that are trying to buy that exact same property, which then the price goes from $300,000 to $350,000 to $375,000 to $400,000 to $500,000 until it's an offer that no other white family at the time is willing to offer more than. Do you see how that works? And that's what drives up the property value in a predominantly white neighborhood. Right? But why did all of these white brothers and sisters make these increasingly higher offers when the home originally was only valued at $300,000? What was their primary motivation? Now, many of our white brothers and sisters, well, I love the location. Yeah, I bet you do. Or it's close to my business. They'll make up all kinds of reasons. But the real reason is on your screen. It's because they see the neighborhood as being a neighborhood that most likely is not going to have any or only very few black homeowners become homeowners in it. It's going to be predominant. It's going to remain a predominantly white neighborhood because of the prices of the houses. And the prices of the houses and properties are driven up because of the bidding from white families, our white brothers and sisters, who desperately want to buy that house because they realize this fact. Ain't too many black people gonna be buying houses here. So this is a good location. This is a good neighborhood. That's the real reason. Don't let them lie to you. Anything else? It's a cat. Okay, so with that, family, that's basically your foundational explanation of gentrification, how it works, how we as black property owners constantly are losing out, being taken advantage of, as well as literally just losing. Our grandparents and elderly parents are losing homes that they've bought and paid for in full, oftentimes just because they get behind and start to struggle paying the property tax, or the property tax increases. And again, on your screen, many of you are familiar with this, but this is a previous redlining map, right? All the areas in red is where the city forced funneled black homeowners and renters to live at. These were black neighborhoods, the red neighborhoods. All of the rest of the gray areas, parts of the city and neighborhoods and communities were predominantly white. So the homes in the gray areas had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times the property values magically than the same homes, the same dirt in the red areas. You see how that works? See how that works? Just what I explained to you. Racism. Property value racism. Whether it's redlining, which supposedly has ended it today, but it has never ended because of what I just explained to you. Now, there's a systematic racist market or real estate market. They don't necessarily have to redline anymore. They use the property value and its increased amounts to exclude black home buyers. Now, are there some black family members that still can afford even the higher home values in predominantly white neighborhoods? Absolutely. But it's a very small, it's like a 3 or 5% of the black community that, it may be a little bit more, but that can actually afford to buy homes in these predominantly white areas because the property values are so, there's a word I'm trying to spit out and I can't, they're so escalated. That's not the word, but it's another word. They're artificially inflated. That's what I'm trying to say. They're artificially inflated due to the racism or the desire for most white brothers and sisters to say, we want to live here, but we want to make sure that black people or most black people also can't afford to live here. We want our neighborhood to remain majority white. Right? Now, they can rest at peace and say, well, as an individual person, home buyer or family, we didn't make it hard for black homeowners to move in and buy these 500,000, 800,000 homes, $1 million homes. That's not my fault. That's just the market. That's just the racist market, because that home is worth $1 million or valued at $1 million because it's a predominantly white neighborhood. And the potential home buyers are making higher and higher bids. Why? Because they know it's a predominantly white neighborhood, and pretty much the higher the bids go, the less chance black families are going to be able to afford to buy homes in that neighborhood. Yeah. So, family, that's the type of stuff that's been going on in most cities throughout the United States for decades, actually centuries. So, again, in conclusion, family, to try to stop these, especially these, when the property taxes are increasing on our grandparents' homes, or our elderly parents' homes, and we know that they're on a fixed income, we got to start having sit down conversations with them. Even if they don't open up about it the first few times, you don't give up. You got to keep going, because they own this property. It's their house. We need to do everything we can to try to prevent them from owning this property. An additional reason why we don't want to do that, you go to Big Mama and say, look, Big Mama, once she starts opening up, say, look, you need an extra so many $100 a year to keep up with your property tax. Look, I'm willing to give you that, Big Mama, just to help you stay in your house. Okay? Now, I'll do that as long as you will agree. If I do that and I'm helping you pay your property tax and stay in your house, this is your house, I ain't coming nowhere, that when your time comes, or say it however you want to say it, when your time comes after you gone, we signed an agreement that when your time comes, Big Mama, this property automatically transfers ownership to me, and only me, because I'm the only one helping you pay the property tax or help you pay your bills. It's basically essentially an investment that I'm willing to make to help you, Big Mama. Hell, you don't really tell them, but you're willing to help them, even though they may not agree to turn the house over to you when they're gone, when it's their time. But I mean, a lot of these property taxes are several $1,000 increases. You may have to help Big Mama with $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 every year or more to help Big Mama hold on to this house and this property. And you say, well, why do all that? If it's that much to help, you got to put in that much investment to help Big Mama and our grandparents and elderly parents hold on to their properties. It's because once their time has come, and now that house transfers, that property transfers, and now you're the owner of that house. Now you own real estate, and you have all the options in front of you of what to do with that property. You can sell it. You can rent it. You can move into it, relocate to it and move into it. You can redevelop it, fix it back up. You do all this stuff because you should understand what I've just gone through previously and explained to you. Real estate goes through cycles. And in America, oftentimes it's a gentrification cycle. So while your property, Big Mama's property may be at X value today, once Big Mama's time comes and that property becomes yours, 10 or 20 years after that property becomes yours, that property value, especially in predominantly black neighborhoods, because of gentrification, that property value could triple or quadruple. That's where you win on your investment in helping Big Mama with her stay in her house, with her property. So over the years, you may have to help Big Mama with $5, $10, $15, $20,000, over the last part of Big Mama's life to help her stay in her house. But then when Big Mama's time comes, that house automatically, legally, you have to sign this on the dotted line. It legally becomes yours. You're now the owner of the property, whether you're a child, a niece, or a nephew, what have you. Okay? Now you stand, especially with it being a predominantly black neighborhood, if you hold on to that property and don't sell it, 10, 20, 30 years later, after you're the owner, it very well, due to gentrification, may explode in its value. Okay? Do you see? We got to start doing this. This saves our grandparents, our elderly parents. This saves them and prevents them from becoming homeless, because we're just helping them initially to stay in their house. The house that they worked hard their entire lives and paid off. They're supposed to be able to stay in their house and keep their house, even if they do need a little help doing so. And then once their time has come, their house can transfer to you. And if you don't sell it and you hold on to it for 10 or 20 years, you very well may find yourself sitting on pretty much a gold mine. As long as you yourself, again, as the value increases, if the neighborhood is being gentrified, as long as you can continue to afford to pay and maintain the property tax on the property. Or if it increases so high, it gets to a point where you I can't even keep it no more. Then you have the option to go ahead and sell the property before you get behind on property tax and it gets seized. You can sell the property and go ahead and extract the profit out of the property and go on about your business. I mean, right here in my neighborhood right now, if my neighborhood started to be gentrified, which there's some things happen. I got several new white neighbors in my neighborhood. Don't get it twisted. But if it starts and there's some new redevelopment happening just like 2 blocks from my home. I'm not going to get into that, but if it starts to happen, right? And let's say now the city is trying to revitalize the community because of gentrification. Okay, as long as I'm able to maintain my property tax or the property tax increase, what if Microsoft or Amazon decides to come and build a new base of operations right on one of those previous auto plant locations that are now completely abandoned? Now I own a house that's 15 minutes away from Microsoft or Amazon or Apple or whatever. Guess what will happen to the property value of my house within a couple of years? it'll explode. Why? Because now all of the workers that want to work at Apple or whatever it is, this Microsoft plant or whatever, they want these houses now. And now they'll come in and start bidding, outbidding each other, and it'll just blow the whole market up, including my house. It'll drive the price, and it doesn't really matter the size of the house, or as I've shown you, the condition of the property when gentrification begins, if that's what happens. Doesn't matter. If companies and businesses start to relocate to the area, to the community, that have desired jobs or high paying jobs or whatever, oh, here they come. And there go your property value exploding. This is what's happened in areas in California, in New York, and other places that's caused the property values to explode. These are desired locations to live. If it's not for racism reasons, as far as a lot of our white brothers and sisters who only want to live in predominantly white communities, it's because there's a new big business development and jobs, IT jobs or tech jobs or whatever. Think about Silicon Valley, whatever the case may be, that start building operation centers and plants and whatnot, bringing hundreds, if not thousands of jobs. The houses in those areas, many near those areas, were originally predominantly black owned. Not anymore. Because either while they were black owned and when this development started to happen, the gentrification started. Because, well, let me say this. Oftentimes, when you have a predominantly black neighborhood or community where gentrification has begun, oftentimes many of our white brothers and sisters that are participating in this, that are buying these homes and fixing them back up, oftentimes they know the city's redevelopment plans before everyone else does, or before the black homeowners find out about it. So that's another little trick bag that happens that they don't talk about. They'll see, like I showed you, the city plans. They'll see those years before the actual homeowners in that neighborhood get to see those plans. So they know we need to get a head start on this primarily black neighborhood and start buying up these properties because we know what's coming. That's another part of systematic racism, systematic white supremacy. So again, in defense, we got to start talking to our grandparents and our elderly parents. Find out what's going on. In fact, oftentimes, like say, if your grandparents or elderly parents or, were like my mom initially, they didn't want you in their private personal business and stuff. You already have their address. A lot of times you can go and find the property ID number, I believe that's what it's called, for your grandparents or elderly parents' home. If you go and research, you can find the actual property ID number. And you have the address. If you have those two, nowadays, in most cities, you can go to the city property tax website, put in that property tax or property ID number and the address and hit search. And the city's property tax website will show you what the current annual or semi-annual property tax rate is or bill is. It'll literally show you what the bill is. Or if it's, And you also, if your grandparents or parents are behind on that property, it'll show you they're behind this much. So that's another way, even before they're willing to open up to you and tell you if something's going on or if they're struggling with it, that you can find out. Again, family, hit the like button because I'm dropping nothing but gems here. I'm dropping nothing but gems here. We got to start saving the properties that our families own and do all that we can to keep those properties and pass them on to our kids and grandkids. Keep them in our family. That's generational wealth, because if we hold on to them, they may be predominantly black neighborhoods today, but in 20, 40, 60 years from now, at some point, the city and a lot of our white brothers and sisters are going to start eyeballing this neighborhood and start gentrification. And that's when the property value, as I've explained to you, will explode. And if we, as the original or current so-called black homeowners and property owners, if we still own and maintain those properties, we can sit there, hold those properties, and either stay permanently if we can still afford the property tax on it, or if it gets to a point where the property tax gets so high we can't afford it, then we can just say, okay, it's now time for me to sell and extract the wealth out of this property that I can get today. And you could be talking $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $700,000, $800,000 worth of profit out of that same house that Big Mama and Big Papa used to own. Do you see that? Do you see that? You got to think down the road, family. You got to think down the road. And it may be 20, 30, 40 years down the road, but you got to think the long game. There's a reason why a lot of our white brothers and sisters come to these currently prominently black-owned neighborhoods and start buying these dilapidated properties. They know what's coming, most of them, or they at least anticipate it, if they don't have inside information already. You see that? So again, smash the likes, family. Share this report on all your social media. You got to start thinking like this, family. Hold on as best we can to the properties that we currently own and have. Pass them down to our children, our grandchildren, and so forth. Keep them in the family if possible. This is how we now are able to generate generational wealth and begin to close the wealth gap. But a lot of us end up finding ourselves in the situations like if it's your elderly parents' home and they bought and paid for it, and then here you are, you done been living all recklessly, jacking your life up, and now your elderly parents have got to the point where they can't maintain the property tax on their property anymore. You ain't got your life together and your money together enough to be able to help them, because you out here clowning. You out here not establishing yourself and building security for yourself out here in the world. So when that time comes, you ain't even got no money to even try to help them. You out here dang near homeless yourself. That's what's happening to a lot of us, family. So then what happens to Big Mama's house in that situation? The city seizes it, like I showed you. And now that wealth that Big Mama had, it's just gone. It's out of the family forever. It's just lost to the wind. We got to stop this from happening. That's another reason why all of us, we got to get our lives together, get ourselves economically stable while we're young. The sooner we get economically stable and got money, I'm talking about got more than $5,000 in the bank. Okay, as soon as we get to that stage and beyond, now we're in a position to be able to help Big Mama or Big Papa out and help them keep these properties that we own, that they own, and then we eventually will own. Then we can build generational wealth through that. Okay? Because that's the same way a whole lot of our white brothers and sisters, they're inheriting properties from their parents and grandparents. And a lot of times it's a property like, I don't really want to live in this neighborhood. What's this house worth? $400,000? Oh, I'm going to go ahead and sell that. I'm going to put that $400,000 in my pocket. Now they got an extra $400,000. I mean, generational wealth, whether they keep the house or they sell it. Do you see how that works? Now, lastly, here's what's happening to a lot of us, unfortunately, with this whole increase of rental rates and property taxes exploding. Today, this is what's happening, what's on your screen. Mama and her couple of kids, a single mom with a couple of kids living in her apartment or sometimes a house, ends up because Big Mama, neither one of them together, the daughter or the mother, together don't have enough money and resources to keep up paying current on Big Mama's property taxes. So Big Mama's house that she owns gets seized and taken. And Big Mama ends up having to move in with her daughter and her kids. And what's crazy, in many of these situations, the daughter needs Big Mama's help paying her rent or mortgage. She needs Big Mama to come in and go, okay, I can help you pay this much extra to you every month out of my fixed income. I can just go ahead and give it to you. Okay. And the daughter sometimes will go ahead and accept it because she really need it. And not say that now they're basically roommates. This is what's happening. Like I told you earlier, that report I saw with the elderly white couple, the lady in that couple, she had to move back in with her daughter. That's exactly what I'm explaining to you. It's happening to many of us. Or worse. This. So, family, you gotta keep all of this information in mind. Again, hit the like button, share this report on all your social media channels with all your peoples, and be sure to be subscribed to One Brothas Mind. I mean, I'm putting in work here today. I'm dropping gems that will help you, help us, many of us, in our families with currently what's going on, as well as help us build generational wealth. This is one way we can do that, especially with the property tax aspect with our grandparents and our elderly parents. The other thing, when you end up in this situation, they are happy and great, but a lot of times Big Mama actually, or Big Papa, they got some significant health problems. And they actually may be have a health conditions where they actually need to be taken care of physically. They need nursing care. So in a lot of these situations, moving in with your daughter or your son, that's not even an option because your daughter got to go to work. She got to go to her job every day. She can't, a lot of times work it out to where she can stay at home and actually care for mama or daddy full time. I mean, there's some stuff there you can look into, filing for various assistant options based on the fact that you're caring for full time for a family member. That is a thing, but it's not really lucrative or high paying, but it is a thing. Depending on how much your rent is or how much your mortgage is, you might be able to swing that and at least stop working while, and care for your parent, your elderly parent, while, in their last years. And then you can always return to work and return to your career after they have passed on. Okay? That is a thing. You would have to do some serious research on it. Source research. But a lot of times that's the case. So daughter's got to work her job, and so your elderly parent ends up, their only option is to move into assisted living facilities, or and those aren't the best options. Like I showed you, those double rooms and the single room options, those aren't the best options. Your parent doesn't want to be there. Your grandparents don't want to be there. And what's crazy is a lot of those nursing homes or low-income housing areas or assisted living homes, they're shutting down also. Many of them have closed their doors over the last few years. Many because of staffing shortages, because they can't afford to pay staff higher wages. So a large portion of their staff leaves for new jobs, and they're required to maintain a certain amount of staff to be able to safely care for the patients or residents that they have. And if they can't maintain proper staff numbers, the city will shut them down because it's not safe environment for the residents. Do you get that? So many have shut down, or they run through financial trouble. They try to raise the price of what it costs for their residents to stay in these assisted living or low income nursing homes or what have you. They try to raise the price up because they need more money to be able to pay their staff more, what have you. All economics. And now a whole lot of the residents can no longer afford the new prices, just like with the rental increases. And so the residents, they start evicting residents. And pretty soon they don't have enough paying residents to economically survive. So they shut down for that reason. And here's what they don't tell you. They'll report to you on mainstream media that, this nursing home or this assisted living home is shutting its doors, unfortunately. But what they don't tell you in those mainstream news reports is most of the residents that were there when they shut down, they're not relocated. They don't get relocation assistance. There's not other nursing homes and assisted living places that they can just go, okay, well, we'll just move you over to this one and you can move in there and you'll be okay. Those other ones are full already. So when a lot of these assisted living and low income nursing home places shut down, the residents that were there, they're literally out on the street or end up in shelters. And again, many of them need full day, full time, or significant care assistance. Many need wheelchairs, help going to the bathroom, or help showering. But yet they end up at shelters, or in the worst case, many of them are ended up out on the streets, homeless. So, I mean, it's so bad. Even hospitals, like in that type of situation, if there's someone that's at assisting living or low income nursing home and they got some significant health issues where they need help physically with most things or all things or whatever, when the nursing home or assisted living place shuts down, there's no other place. They'll end up at a hospital in the city. And the hospital will try to care for them and help them for a short period of time, whether it's a few days or a couple of weeks or whatever, to try to see if they can nurse them back to better health, quickly. And if they can, or at least the hospital in that scenario is able to decide that patient, that elderly person has got back to a medically stable status, then the hospitals put them out. And many other hospitals, because the assisted living, low-income nursing home places are predominantly full in most cities, the hospitals are just putting them in a van, driving a few blocks away from the hospital in many cases, and just dropping them off right on the street. Let us know if you need any more help. Just give us a call, and the van drives off. This is literally happening as we speak, family. Now, I'm not saying every hospital is doing that. But there are some still good hospitals that refuse to treat people that way, But y'all seen some of the stories. Look up hospitals, do a search on your social media or the internet. Hospital drops off patients on the streets, stuff like that. See how many stories and headlines pop up. It's been happening. It's been happening for a long time. Ain't nothing new. So again, these are scenarios. Again, we're trying to offer here at One Brothas Mind to provide some practical solutions and answers to these type of situations. The best thing to do is to respond or make plans early. Always try to be ahead of the situation, ahead of the game on it. So you don't find yourself in a bind that you are in a position that you have no options. You can't do anything about. Okay? Do that, family. And more of us and more of our parents will not end up in this situation that's currently happening. So y'all let me know what y'all think on this report in the comments. Let's chop it up. If you have some additional practical options and answers and solutions that we can use, drop them in the comments, man. That's what they're there for. Let's help each other out and, provide information so that we have as many options as we can possibly have, because we're getting slayed out here in these streets in regards to new homeless so-called Black Americans and Black elderly, our elders that are sleeping in cars. And like I showed you, they're passing laws making it illegal to sleep in your car. Or if all you got is a tent somewhere to sleep in your tent, they're arresting you, throwing you in jail for literally being homeless in a lot of these cities. And that is going not only to continue, but that is going to increase. Welcome to America. And this concludes this broadcast on One Brothas Mind. We thank you for joining us. And as a part of the new Black media, B1 choices are mandatory and being on code is required. But never fear, Yeshua the Christ is with you always. Shalom.